Alright, so real quick before we get going, because I printed it wrong, make sure you put 5-6 at the top of your thing. So you know this was chapter 5, section 6. Got any headphones out? What's up? Headphone out? Okay, so we are going to be learning the fundamental theorem of algebra today. Do you know what fundamental means?
Easy.
It's not fun.
Basic, yeah.
That's close.
There's no fun in this.
That's close.
It's more mental.
It's kind of basics is close.
Funda.
In this case, though,
Funda.
fundamental
Funda.
means like the
Funda.
foundation, like your very foundation. If you don't have this, you don't have anything. So it's kind of important.
But it's not.
So we are learning the fundamental theorem of algebra. So it's kind of important, and it's actually not that big of a deal.
Foundation.
It says if p of x is a polynomial of degree n is bigger than 1, what that means is your biggest exponent, n is your biggest exponent. If that is bigger than 1, then p of x equals 0 has exactly n roots, or that's where it crosses the x-axis. We've been finding answers, roots, solutions, including multiple and complex roots. Okay, that's just a big mathy way of saying, in other words, if you have a graph, as long as n is bigger than 1, is 1 or bigger, if your exponent's 1 or bigger, your graph will cross the x-axis as many times as its biggest exponent. But some of those things might be imaginary or in the exact same spot. That's basically what your fundamental theorem of algebra says. So, your biggest exponent tells you how many answers you will have. Some of them might be imaginary though, and some of them might be like a repeat. So some of them might kind of repeat on the same spot, which is kind of weird. We haven't really looked at that, but you'll see. So let me give you a quick thing. If I have 3x to the 5th minus 4x squared plus 8, how many answers am I going to have? How many solutions?
Is that 5?
What's my biggest exponent?
What is that, 5?
Biggest exponent is 5.
That is 5.
That means I'm going to have 5 answers.
Damn, this sucks.
What?
Yeah.
What if it's like an
So,
exponent of like 6,000?
fundamental theorem of algebra says you're going to have as many answers as your biggest exponent. So if I have 3x to the 5th as my biggest exponent, I'm going to have 5 answers.
Is there like 100 exponent?
Alright, let's look at this. If I have x to the 4th, no, sorry. No, you're good. I have x to the 4th plus x to the 3rd minus 7x squared minus 9x minus 18. How many answers am I going to have?
4.
4. I'm going to have 4 answers, which means I have to keep going until I get 4 answers. And they're actually not going to be too difficult today, I don't think. Even though it sounds like a lot. So, what we're going to do to start with is we're going to find our easy roots. So, there's a couple ways we can do this. We have learned difference of squares, sum or difference of cubes, quadratic equation, but this is an x to the 4th, right? We could do one of two things. We could either find easy roots by graphing and then use synthetic division to trim it down, or we could use the rational root theorem. Which would you rather do, graph or rational root theorem?
Either.
I don't know. Whatever's easier.
Really? I was expecting like everybody to say graph really loud because you just plugged into Desmos.
Graph, so you can plug into Desmos.
Graph. Because you guys didn't like rational root theorem, nobody really likes that one.
Is that the one from yesterday?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So we are going to use Desmos to graph this. Alright, so make sure you got Desmos. We're going to find our easy roots to start with. We're going to find easy roots. So roots are where it crosses the x-axis, right? So I'm going to look at my graph and I'm going to see where it crosses the x-axis. So I'm going to just type in this whole thing, x to the 4th plus x to the 3rd minus 7x squared minus 9x minus 18. I'm going to plug the whole thing into Desmos. So actually let me grab a paper so I can just look at it as I type it in. Alright, so we have x to the 4th plus x to the 3rd minus 7x squared minus 9x minus 18. Okay, so I've got this graphed. So I am going to have at least, or I'm going to have 4 answers, right? Because that's my biggest exponent. How many times does this cross the x-axis that you can see?
2.
2. So I've got 2 answers to start with, which means my other 2 answers are either going to be imaginary, or maybe there's like a weird double up thing right here. It doesn't look like it though, so I'm pretty sure we're going to have 2 imaginary answers. So the first 2 are easy. What are my first 2 answers?
-3, 3.
-3 and 3. So I need 2 more now. So I'm going to write down my easy answers. I'll just put them over here. Here we go. X equals -3 and 3, right? Those are my first 2 easy answers. I need to find the rest of them though. And we're going to use synthetic division to help with that. So what we're going to do is I'm going to set this up for synthetic division. So I'm going to put this, let's see, I got my box here. I'm going to put down this 1x4 and so on. So 1, 1, -7, -9, -18. What I can do with synthetic division, we haven't really talked about it much yet. What? You want? None of you get those unless you all give me a bite.
Oh.
No, it's too late.
Alright, we'll wait. It's not like I was in the middle of teaching or anything. Valentine's Day.
I show you. Valentine's Day.
I got 2.
Dude, why did you get it?
Did you put it? Did you go from anonymous? Make you feel special?
There's 3 of them. That's right, you had
None of you eat those in class. So help me. Gonna get ants.
Probably already is.
I'm actually surprised there's not.
Yeah.
Especially with how messy the freshmen are. Should be ants everywhere.
They're probably still doing the floor. The floor is not even that color.
Underneath the
It's
carpet.
white.
Yeah. All right, save your cookies for later. Don't eat it right now.
Somebody told me to be good.
All right, hey, focus. Focus. Okay, I'm gonna use synthetic division, and it's gonna help me trim down this x to the 4th, and we're gonna trim it down to an x squared because we know how to factor x squared. So how can we factor something with an x squared as your biggest exponent? What?
I'm so confused at what just happened.
Square root.
I know. We'll talk about it in a minute.
Square root.
Yeah, what's that called?
Square root.
What kind of equation or formula?
Oh, quadratic.
Quadratic formula. So my goal is to use my 2 answers so far. I looked at my graph, and I saw it crosses at -3 and 3, right? I need to find 2 more answers, and I'm going to do that by using synthetic division to trim this x4 down to an x squared. Because when I get x squared, all I need to do is quadratic equation. That's all I need after that. So I have set up a synthetic division problem, like from last week.
You
I
forgot
put in
minus 9.
1, 1, -7, -9, -18. And synthetic division is going to be nice because I am going to take one of these numbers. It doesn't matter which one. It doesn't matter if it's -3 or 3. I'm just going to start with 3, and I'm going to plug it in my box. Right here. And I'm going to use synthetic division, and we're going to trim this down so it's a little smaller. Okay, one thing to keep in mind. When you put stuff in the box from parentheses, you change the sign, right?
Yep.
Does this have an x plus or minus something in parentheses right here?
No.
So we just write it down. Only flip the sign when you get a parentheses. So like, if I have this in parentheses, right, and I'm dividing with synthetic division, I plug in -3 in my box, right? When you just get it from a graph, you do not change the sign.
Do you have to use both numbers?
Yes, we will. We're going to use both numbers. Alright, so keep that in mind. So I'm starting by plugging in 3 in for synthetic division. And you guys did a bunch of synthetic division. I'm not really worried about you doing this. So we're going to do synthetic division real quick. 3 times 1 is 3. 4. 3 times 4 is 12. 5. 3 times 5 is 15. Negative. No, 6. Yep. 3 times 6 is 18. And we get 0, right? Okay. So I did synthetic division, and I trimmed this down. This is my remainder. This is my
Number.
So I got remainder, number, x squared, x to the 3rd. What's my biggest exponent now?
3.
X to the 3, right? Can I use quadratic equation on x to the third?
No.
No, I want an x squared. So I'm actually going to do a second synthetic division. But this time, I already plugged in 3. This time, I'm going to plug in -3. I'm going to just, and I'm not even going to like rewrite it. I'm just going to put -3 right here. I'm going to do a brand new second synthetic division. And because my remainder is 0, I'm not even going to put it on here. So I'm just going to cross it out. So, synthetic division just like last time. 1, -3 times 1 is -3. Let's see, 1, -3 times 1, -3
You use the
again.
numbers you got from the last one.
2, yep, and I'm going to use the numbers I got from my first problem here. -3 times 2 is -6, and then I get 0.
Do we need a little
And this
column
is
name on the
Interesting.
page?
That's your quadratic equation, just so you can see it again. Alright, let me get some more space here.
Interesting.
Okay, so I have remainder, number, x squared. Whoever's got their phone out, better put it away before I snatch it. Snatch it right up. Alright, I have 1x squared plus 1x plus 2. And I don't have a remainder, so I'm not going to write it.
and now in quadratic form.
I've got x squared, right? We're going to quadratic equation it. So, we're going to quadratic equation it. So, I've got your quadratic equation right here in your paper, in case you didn't have it memorized. Which I don't know why you wouldn't, because it's so cool.
So why is it up there though?
Okay, so we're going to do quadratic equation on this, and let's get down to an answer here pretty quick. So, I have -b, I got a, b, c, -1 plus or minus square root of 1 squared minus 4 times 1 times
God,
2.
it's not to go to engineering.
Whole thing is divided up by 2 times 1. You guys have done this a bunch, so I'm not going real slow. I'm not really worried about you guys being able to quadratic equation this. -1 plus or minus square root of,
Plus 1 is
let's see,
7.
1 minus
-7.
8, -7. And then the whole thing is divided by 2. And then there's one last thing we can do.
Imaginary.
What's the last thing we can do in this problem?
Make it imaginary.
Make it imaginary. So, I am just going to go -1 plus or minus imaginary, my I, square root of 7, divided by 2. Yes.
Do you want to see
just in the way.
the
Yeah.
square root it?
No, it's fine. So, unless it's a nice square root, like 4, don't square root it. But this one is not a nice one, so waste one. Alright,
4.
and do we have 4 solutions now?
Or 2.
Why not?
Wait, no.
What does that plus minus mean?
What about 1?
We have 2 of them, right? We got -1 plus, -1 minus. So, even though we were writing this down in one thing, we actually have our last 2. I got -1 plus I, -1 minus I. So, let me get my other answers just so I can put them all together. We got x equals -3, and x equals 3. We found those from the graph. And we've got these ones. I have my 4 answers now. Ooh, good times. Good times. Alright, that's all we're doing today. We're going to keep practicing though.
That's too much.
That's
It's not that
Can
bad.
I go to the restroom?
Can we get the homework then?
We're going to do at least one more.
Can I go to the restroom and be late?
Let's just do our in class.
I
and you'll
have to
do it.
that's
Oh
really
my
bad.
god, that's a lot of numbers.
Good times, man. It's good
3
times.
answers.
Alright, so let's go through and look at this. I have x to the third minus 5x squared plus 16x minus 80. How many answers am I going to have? 3. We are going to have 3 answers. So, let's go ahead and graph it and see if we have some nice easy ones. Because when you do this, you might get lucky and you might have 3 things on your graph. All you have to do might be just graph it and write down where it crosses the x-axis.
What if you get none?
So you might get lucky with that.
Is it possible to get none?
Not today, I don't think.
Okay.
Wow.
Or ever in high school, but
Or ever in high school.
yeah. But you never know, maybe we get lucky.
Collins plebs.
Alright, so x to the third
There's only one.
minus 5x squared plus
Are you serious? There's only
16x minus 80.
Wow.
Alright, let's take a look.
No, I swear it crosses on a different axis.
Doesn't matter. All I care about is x. Alright, how many times is this line across the x-axis?
X-axis somewhere.
Once.
Five.
Yep, it crosses at 5. So what's one answer?
5.
5. That means we're going to have to use synthetic division and find the rest.
So
So we get x equals 5. Alright. How are we going to trim this x to the third down to an x squared? What did we just say?
Synthetic division.
Synthetic division. So when I make my synthetic division, what am I putting in the box?
Again.
5. Remember, do not switch the signs when you just get the number from a graph. Like we got 5 from our graph, so I'm not going to switch signs. I only switch when I have a parentheses. So I got 1, -5, 16, -80.
5 times 16.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to synthetic division this, so we need 1.
So we just
5 times 1,
Well,
0.
then it's just 1.
Oh, 5 times 0 is 0.
Or no, it's just.
16, 50,
No, there's no
30,
square.
80.
Yeah.
Ooh. Negative 0.
Plus 16.
Major number x
And then you.
squared.
Yep.
Sure, you put plus 0. So it's there.
Alright, I got 1x squared? Oh yeah.
Wait, okay.
Plus 0x? Yes.
I'm
No,
so
there's
confused.
no
Okay.
X. It's 0.
Alright, where you at?
I know, that's why this is extra hard, Jaden.
Why do you
Where
put
you
it
at?
there?
Yeah, why do you put it there?
For
There's-
Okay,
quadratic
so,
equation.
Where are you getting those other numbers? Like
You
you
use
do
0 for
5,
B?
like I know
You gotta
that-
do 5 times
Okay.
1.
These numbers?
Yeah, okay.
From
I'm
right
confused
here.
at that
So
part.
0 plus
Like
or
I
minus
understand where you got the 5.
0.
Okay, from when I graphed it, right?
Minus 4.
Yeah, like from when you
The
grabbed it.
coefficients.
And then just
1.
after the synthetic division is what I don't understand.
Okay,
What's
so the number in the box I got from the graph, right?
Yeah.
1, I got,
What are you
there's a
doing?
1 right there.
Solve the equation?
-5, -5 right there. 16.
Yeah, okay. Like I know where you got the numbers. I just don't know
Okay.
where you're getting the like.
The answers.
Yeah.
Oh,
the
you not
answers,
remember-
Sorry.
Were you here for synthetic division?
4.
No, I think I.
I don't know.
That-
Maybe.
That would do it.
I don't know, maybe.
I'll have to go synthetic division after this. Make sure you come up and ask me though, because I forget sometimes.
Okay, I'll go
Yeah,
ask
I'll-
because I wanted to check my grade anyway.
Alright, so we have this down. We're going to have to go through and do quadratic equation. Or we could actually do, no, we can't do sum of squares because we don't have that. We'll different squares. We're going to have to do quadratic equation. So, -0 plus or minus square root of 0 squared minus 4 times 1 times 16, all divided by 2 times 1. Oh, let's see. So we're going to have plus or minus. I'm not going to write down that 0 because it's just 0 plus or minus something. Let's see. 4 times 1 is 1. 4 times 16 is 64?
Negative 64.
Negative 64, yeah. And whole thing is divided by 2. Alright. Well, let's go through this
A
still.
lot of space.
What am I going to do with the square root of a negative?
Not as much as matrices.
In the imaginary, right? What's the square root of 64?
8.
8.
64.
I'm going to go plus minus 8i, because the square root of 64 is 8.
I 8.
And then the whole thing is divided by 2. On this one, when I do not have any pluses or minuses with imaginaries, I can just divide it. What's 8 over 2?
4.
4. This is plus minus 4i. So my second answer, my third answer, are plus minus 4i.
Oh, I
Supposed to be 3.
There are. 1,
Oh, yeah.
2, 3. It's kind of sneaky. Because plus minus counts as 2 answers. How much thing here? I don't know if I can. Why do you keep turning the mic off?
Can we be done?
Alright, so I'll give you guys a choice. Do you want to do an in-class problem or just go to your exit ticket?
Exit ticket.
Class.
Exit ticket.
Alright, I'll help you, Helena.
Yeah.
Since you missed some of this.
I use restroom.
That's why. Don't understand it.
I don't care.
Alright, I'll trust you
My bad.
for now. Okay, so we're gonna skip this one. And this one. Although this was a fun one because you had 5.
No thanks.
And we're gonna do your exit ticket. And I'll give you a hint. Actually, I'll just help you out. We have to make these equal 0 first.
Yeah, you already gave us
What's that mean?
Make it
So-
equal.
I'm gonna minus 13x squared on both sides.
Oh, okay.
And plus 10x.
Never mind.
So x to the 4th plus 2x to the 3rd minus 13x squared plus 10x equals 0. There you go. Alright, make sure you graph it. See what answers you get from your graph and then go from there. If you don't have everything on your graph, you better start doing synthetic division. And I'm gonna turn on Secreta for your warm or exit ticket. And then I'll put the homework on the class.